Today I'm going to say a little bit about postcards and their value to the theatre historian. The postcard became popular in the late 19th century as a means of communication, and by the early 20th century something like 600 million postcards were being sent per year. Just before the First World War, something like 800 million postcards were being sent per year. That's just in Britain. The postcard was a promotional material and was also something that people wanted to collect. The focus today is very much on the performer and the way that postcards provided a material way of representing them to their public. One of the performers that I'm going to focus on in talking about postcards is the musical and pantomime artist Vesta Tilley. Vesta Tilley was perhaps most famous as a male impersonator. Her appeal was largely to women, unlike many other female musical stars who appeal more to male spectators. On top of this, she was renowned for her act lacking the vulgarity that some musical acts, those of, say, Mary Lloyd, for instance, possessed. This is Vesta Tilley in male attire. In 1912, when she appeared in front of the royal family, Queen Mary and her female entourage all covered their faces with their programmes because they couldn't bring themselves to look at a woman on stage wearing trousers. Vesta Tilley generated a lot of visual material, especially postcards. This shows her in the typical sort of masher or swell outfit, and it's dated 1906. Mary has a message from Millie: "Hope you will like this card for your album." So this is obviously sent to somebody who is collecting. Vesta Tilley often appeared in male attire. This is a similar postcard, again, showing her dressed as a sort of masher come swell character. And this is just a note from 1905, somebody writing about a picnic that they'd enjoyed, nothing at all relating to Vesta Tilley whatsoever in that message. She was famed for her roles as swells in top hats and so on. Burlington Bertie was one of her favourite characters. But perhaps most of all, she was well known for her role as a soldier. She became known as the greatest British recruiting sergeant of them all. Some of her popular songs dressed in army gear included "Jolly Good Luck to the Girl Who Loves a Soldier" and "The Army of Today's All Right." She had quite an impact on both the conventions of male impersonation, on the popularity of male impersonation, and as I say, particularly amongst female spectators. And on top of that, she was just extremely popular. She married a theatre manager, and eventually, when he decided he wanted to stand as a Conservative MP, she felt it was best to give up male impersonation. Vesta Tilley was celebrated visually, especially through postcards. The second performer I want to talk briefly about is Dan Leno. Dan Leno was arguably the most popular male musical performer and pantomime performer of the late 19th century. Some argue that he invented the pantomime dame, and certainly from 1888 to 1904, he appeared in a series of Drury Lane pantomimes, and before that Surrey Theatre pantomimes, in dame roles very, very successfully. At Drury Lane, he usually played with another musical artist, Herbert Campbell. Dan Leno was also known as the King's Jester because of his popularity with Edward VII, and people found his personality very sympathetic. It's not surprising, therefore, that the first has a message on the front page saying, "Dear Rose, wishing you many happy returns of the day." It's very much a celebratory card, seeing Dan Leno as a celebratory sort of figure. A second card is in a similar vein. It's again Dan Leno here at home in his everyday state. Quite a lot of postcards often represented performers in their civilian clothes, as it were, in their home situation. This card has, "Dear Auntie, my love and some kisses for you from Maudie." And this is just a card very much based on Dan Leno's popularity as the go-to person for sending birthday wishes and sending greetings in general to people. Many of the cards of Dan Leno show him in his pantomime roles. Here He's the rather querulous Sister Anne in Bluebeard, a pantomime first performed in the early 20th century. This has a very ambiguous message on the front. It says, "Even in personal beauty, our position is unassailable." And it's signed Ralph, and it's addressed to Miss Sadie Ormington. Sister Anne is a coloured card again. Most of the cards seem to be black and white, but occasionally the coloured cards as well. This is very typical of Dan Leno's Dame roles. Sister Anne is a very curious, inquisitive sister of Bluebeard himself, presented as a rather sort of sad spinster figure. And one of the things to remember about Dan Leno is in his female roles, people often said he was so convincing and so natural that you never thought of him as a man playing a woman. You thought of the role as being what Dan Leno would have been like had he himself been a woman. He was very good at playing these downtrodden working class women whom he transformed into dame roles. The most famous example is this card. It's a picture of Mother Goose, his most famous role, and a role that he became somewhat manically obsessed with. Immediately after playing Mother Goose, he had a very bad nervous breakdown, which really continued through to the end of his life. This card, again, has nothing to do with Dan Leno. It's just saying, sorry, I missed you and I'll write a long letter tomorrow. It's actually dated from 1904, which means that it was sent in the last year of Leno's life after he played Mother Goose. But obviously, again, it tells us that this would be a familiar image for whoever the recipient was. A final example, and it's a really sad one in a way, because by this time, Dan Leno had a drink problem. People said he was going mad by the end of his life. From 1903 to 1904, it was decided that he was well enough to play Queen Sprightly in Humpty Dumpty. And this is the last pantomime he and Herbert Campbell ever appeared in together. Shortly afterwards, Herbert Campbell died as a result of an accident. And a bit later that year, Dan Leno, whose stage performances were by now totally incoherent, died. He somehow got himself together enough to play this role of Queen Sprightly, which had to be rewritten in at the very last moments of his pantomime. Despite the rather sad ending, Dan Leno was perhaps the most celebrated comic performer of his time, and Postcards bear witness to his enormous popularity. Postcards are a very significant way performers were celebrated by the population. And in a way, you could almost talk about Postcards as a way of miniaturizing and possessing your favourite performers. You could put them in a postcard album and they become your own possessions and your own nostalgic source of memories past of great or enjoyable performances. So the postcard is very important in the way that it not only recalls visually the performer in costume or out of costume, but also the way in which that performer's image, that performer's celebrity circulated in the late 19th and early 20th century.